Hello, I'm Rebecca, the founder of triiyo, and welcome to PEP Talks with triiyo. triiyo is the leading solution for workplaces to support their people during every life transition, from starting a family to retiring and every life event in between. On PEP Talks with triiyo, we chat to our expert partners for advice on how to best navigate these common, complex, and often messy life stages that happen during our working career. Keep listening as we connect the dots between life and work with the simple aim of education and empowerment. After all, life happens at work. Today on PEP Talks with triiyo, we're speaking with one of our mental health experts, Steve Kay, about mental health and wellbeing at work. Steve, thank you for being here. And please, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Becca. I'm Steve Kay. Worked in the clinical environment for over 20 years. I wanted to kind of bring that expertise to the forefront and how we can help people and how we can look at return to work and proactively manage mental health.
Fantastic. So 20 years, this is a long time in this space.
It is.
So how have you seen the industry change in those 2 decades?
Starting in mental health in the late 1990s, I've seen a huge change, a very positive change in how we manage mental health and the stigma attached to mental health and discrimination that used to be present. I mean, back, early 2000s, people weren't talking about mental health. It wasn't spoke about. It was quite a taboo topic within the workplace. And I think now we're actively encouraged and we see the benefit of talking about mental health and opening up and that it's okay to have a mental health problem. As we know, 1 in 5 people will experience a mental health problem within their lifetime. So it's great that we've kind of opened up that space. And from looking at a health perspective, when I worked in healthcare 20 years ago, it was under-resourced, wasn't recognised. It was, kind of the poor relation within the healthcare sector. And now it's getting the recognition it deserves and also kind of that promotion that we need to continue with mental health, both within the community, but also within corporate health.
Yeah. In terms of how we remove that stigma, how we normalise it, surely this has got to be one of the first stages of support, early intervention, getting people the support they need and feeling that they're in a safe environment to speak up.
Absolutely. It's really important to be supportive. So as a leader or an organisation that they feel comfortable in addressing mental health and talking about it, and also showing vulnerability as well. I think that's really important. I think if organisations, empower that culture where people feel safe, where early intervention is supported and psychosocial hazards are identified in the workplace, because some industries are inherently risky with the occupations, and we can minimize risk but we can't eliminate it. So I think we need to always be prepared. There is potential for psychological injury at work, but it's around the ongoing management and assessing of that risk, which is really important.
1 in 5, it's that's so high, isn't it? And potentially, maybe we're even have worse numbers than that over the last few years. And I know you won't mind me saying, but obviously out of both of us on this platform and this podcast today, we've both had our own mental health challenges over our lifetimes to date. And I can certainly remember I was in my early 20s. I felt like I was in a black hole. I had constant pressure on my chest, couldn't see light at the end of the tunnel. It was really, after a long period of time, it's actually really hard to see how you can continue, because there's not, the relief doesn't seem to be coming. So this was 20 plus years ago for me. So, and things have definitely changed a lot since then. And, I think finding your own toolkit and ways of working for you are really, empowering. But how important do you think this lived experience is when you're designing or understanding mental health from a workplace perspective or even from a leader perspective?
Look, I think it's advantageous. I think it's really helpful to have that lived experience, and it's vital in service design, so health design, and also, corporate health. I think it can really benefit how policies are developed and how culture is kind of fostered within the organization. I've certainly had one episode of depression whilst working for a corporate employer, and was very well supported and encouraged very gradually to return to the workplace. Conversely, had an episode of anxiety whilst working for health, believe it or not, so public health, and did not have a very fortunate experience, and that kind of amplified the feelings of negativity and thoughts about myself because of the response I received from the employer. So I think I have that lived experience. I've managed people as well as a leader. So I feel I have the tools now of how to support somebody who's struggling with their mental health in the workplace. But I don't think everybody does. And 1 in 5 is high, but there are people who don't have mental health problems and may not understand the concept or be fearful of how to approach that if they're an emerging leader, for example. And I think the beauty of what the mental health journey with triiyo is that it supports best practice, not only for the employee, but also the leader, of when to touch base, and that it is okay to speak about mental health. And I think we need to open that dialogue up around how we talk about mental health, because it is okay, and we need to approach it as we would a physical illness, obviously with sensitivity and empathy. But once we have those lines of communication, I think people recognize that it is okay and there is compassion, and we can manage this and people can recover. Hence, you and I, here we are today, flourishing with mental health. And it is a life cycle. It comes, it can come and go and wax and wane, or however you want to approach it. But it's lifelong. And I think, as you said, we have a toolkit and we learn from our experiences, and that makes us stronger individuals.
Yeah, it's almost, we have this need to rephrase it as mental wellness.
Yes.
Because as we want to be physically well, I think we also want to be emotionally and mentally well.
Yeah.
I certainly, just have implemented tools in my day-to-day life, particularly around meditation and mindfulness, and just being very sort of connected to, how I'm feeling and, my emotions on a day-to-day basis. But I do remember, I think this is one of the important things around destigmatizing and normalizing mental wellness at work is there's a big fear around this being a career limiting or perceived to be a career limiting situation or life event, and I certainly know that the last thing you want to do if you're going through any form of anxiety, depression, or stresses that are affecting your mental health, that you're worried about keeping your job or you're worried about your career. And then, it's a multifaceted approach, isn't it? Because you can have an amazing organization which has a great culture of care, but then if the leader is untrained or unsupported, or like you say, they haven't had a lived experience as yet, and there is so much media around mental health, and it's everyone's journey is so different and unique. How do we know how to care for people? It's not surprising people bury their head, or they don't want to talk about it. As a leader, it's not surprising that if you're an employee or an individual going through this period, that it's also very unusual. And I think part of that is recognizing when it is a problem, or when I'm just at a period of maybe burnout or stress, which are obviously triggers and lead into mental health, or am I just having a bad day? Am I just So how are there any ways that people could kind of go, well, look, if this is happening over a period of time, then this is a sign. What are the symptoms? What should individuals be looking out for to start almost mentally saying, hey, this is becoming a bit of a problem and I should start seeking additional support?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think, people, if they're aware of their triggers and aware of subtle signs of deterioration. So often a really good, strong indicator that you're maybe starting to decline in your mental health is your sleep. So changes in your sleep patterns, often one of the first warning signs. Increased anxiety. Everyone has their own, as you said, unique kind of signs and symptoms of when they're starting to maybe not travel too well. And I think you learn that from experience. Often, if we were more open to it, we could reach out to our peers and they may be able to say, hey, how are you traveling okay today? You don't seem yourself, for example. And I think having that dialogue and that supportive environment can really help identify when you're not traveling so well, and early intervention in terms of what you can do. Maybe increase your exercise. Be aware of just simple things like your coffee consumption, for example. There's things that we use widely, such as caffeine, alcohol, that in small amounts may be beneficial, such as coffee. But longer term, in excess, that can cause problems as well. So we really need to know our own tolerance to things and our own threshold, and really kind of learn from ourselves. So I think it's about self-reflection, and that can be really hard for people to do. Some people, I think I'm naturally quite self-reflective, possibly too much, but for some people, it's a bit of it's a learning exercise.
Yeah. And what about seeking medical treatment? Because there's so much stigma around, this whole topic, and, obviously seeking medical treatment. And I think it's great to find, other ways that we can support ourselves outside of, medication, but there shouldn't be any, barriers to going to the doctor, at the earliest point of concern, and then being sort of step through those stages.
Look, we've made significant changes in terms of access to treatment, and I think that's a government initiative, which is brilliant. And we now have access to psychological intervention via a GP. So you have 20 sessions subsidized to see a psychologist per year. Getting in to see a GP may be a problem depending on where you live, but I think now there's training. It's kind of embedded in everybody's in all disciplines, their education programs around mental health awareness, and GPs are a really good place to start if you're struggling, and just to have that chat and to see what's available. And as you said, it doesn't necessarily have to be medication. Medication's been shown to be very effective, but talking therapies as well is really beneficial, or counselling.
Yeah. So really there should be no, there's no sort of main trigger point, and there should be no barrier to anyone just openly having that first conversation with their GP, and just start at least having that open dialogue, so that they
and also EAP. So within organisations, it's a minimum that they provide EAP, and you could speak to a psychologist or social worker or mental health nurse within the EAP programs as well that organizations have for their staff.
How important do you think the workplace is in, and sort of what role does it or should it play in supporting their people and their people's mental health and mental well-being?
Look,
is it the role of the employer?
Look, it's a good question. I think it's vital that the employer provides the tools for employees to be well, such as EAP, workplace initiatives. But it also, there is onus on the employer as well. So it's a kind of, maintaining good mental health is a bit like a gym workout. You have to work hard. You and I know it doesn't come easily if you are struggling at times, and you really do have to put that effort in. So I think it's both employee and the organisation. So they need to provide those tools and provide that culture where people feel comfortable to disclose if they're having some difficulties. But yes, I would agree, it is the employee as well, where they need to
we have to take responsibility for ourselves as well. And from an employer's perspective, the sooner we as employers or organizations can address an employee's problem or challenge, or that early intervention, the sooner we can get them the support they need, the sooner they're going to come through their recovery, or we can soften the level or the extreme or the extent to their experience with a mental health challenge or illness. So there are, you know, if we're going to be blunt, there are huge commercial benefits from organizations getting on board with it, you know, supporting their employees' mental health, not just because it's the right thing to do, and, you know, we should take a responsibility in terms of care and compassion for the people that work for us, but actually the sooner we get people treatment, the sooner they recover, the better it is for the individual, their family, the community, the team, the organization. You know, it's the sooner we're talking about all of this stuff as if it is a broken arm or, you know, a physical, you know, physical wellness, then the better it is for everyone, both inside work and outside work.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. And increased productivity, reduced absenteeism, for example. Yeah, it has a plethora of benefits to, you know, ensure that the organizations are supporting staff through mental health and promoting good mental health as well, and well-being.
Yeah, and that's probably a whole other conversation that we can have around you know, promotion of good mental health and burnout and overwork and the hustle culture and the grind and things like that. But we'll leave that to another day, because that is a whole different discussion point. But Steve, I've loved talking to you. It is a topic that is very close to my heart, and I know yours too. So thank you for talking to me, and we'll definitely have you on again to talk about a lot of other things related to mental health. So thank you. It's been awesome.
Thanks. Thank you.